thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we know the business community here, investors, they're going to be keenly watching Chancellor Rachel Reeves' speech at noon today. What can we expect to hear from her? And of course, there's been a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty in this run-up to the autumn budget. What do you think she can say that can provide maybe some assurance to businesses?
I think what the Chancellor is going to set out today is her absolute commitment to economic stability, to her fiscal rules, and I think she'll set out how that has enabled her and us as a government to invest in capital projects right across the country, whether that's housing, energy, transport, defence, to get our economy growing, to make sure we're encouraging private investment into our economy, and to make sure that we're making people across Britain better off. And I think that's the vision that she'll put out there, because we know there's lots of challenges in Britain at the moment in terms of housing, energy costs, transport and so on, but we're not going to accept decline. We're going to invest for the future and renew our country for the future.
And of course, there's some policies being floated out with it, scrapping the two-child benefit cap or the youth employment scheme, and you mentioned a few other ones there. But I think the big question is how she's going to pay for it. How are the sums going to add up?
Well, the Youth Guarantee Scheme that you just mentioned there is a really important policy that which the Chancellor is going to be setting out today. And it's about saying we are not happy as a government to let a generation of young people languish without any prospects, to be on benefits indefinitely throughout their lives. We want to make sure that young people get into the world of work wherever they're able to work, and we'll support them to do so. And so the new policy the Chancellor will be setting out today is to say if people have been on universal credit, if they've been on benefits for 18 months, we will offer them a guaranteed paid work placement, and that will make sure that people can get into work, and we can support young people to get into the world of work, because I think we all know that if young people don't get into the world of work when they're young, they risk a lifetime on benefits and shut out of the job market. That's not good for them, and it's not good for the economy.
But there is this feeling amongst the business community that they have really been targeted, particularly in the last budget when it comes to the national insurance contributions and the business rates, and that has really impacted their bottom line. Would the Treasury be willing to review the national insurance contributions in this upcoming budget, given the negative impact that it's had on a lot of businesses?
So I know that when we took that decision around employers' national insurance at the budget last year, we recognised that it was a big decision, it was a difficult decision, probably one of the most difficult decisions we took at the budget last year. And we knew it would have impacts on businesses as they responded to that increase. But the reason we did it was to make sure that we had the funding to get our National Health Service back on its feet. And that's critical for people and families across Britain to make sure they can see a doctor, they can get the medical treatment they need. But it's also really important for businesses, because businesses need a healthy workforce. Businesses need a workforce who are not economically inactive and shut out of the workforce because they're unwell. Businesses need people to be ready to work and get into work. So it's good for the economy as well as for individual households.
But what we're hearing from businesses is that they're actually holding off when it comes to employment and the workforce, because they're being hampered by a lot of these taxes. So how can you get around that, and how can you actually provide growth if businesses, what they're saying is that it's really impacting their bottom line and they can't make these investment decisions, these hiring decisions?
Well, I think what businesses have been telling me over the last year, and in fact before that when we were in opposition, is that what matters most to businesses is to have stability and certainty when they're taking investment decisions. And so when we came into office, we were absolutely determined to restore economic stability to our country, to fix the public finances, to make sure that we got our fiscal rules in place, to make sure that we are clear they're non-negotiable. That stability is something which we haven't been able to take for granted in this country in recent years under the previous government. With Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, you know that the fiscal rules are non-negotiable, and so businesses can have that confidence that that stability that we've restored to the economy and the public finances is the bedrock of everything we're doing in government.
You mentioned stability there, but there's still uncertainty when it comes to taxes. And we heard Keir Starmer in an interview yesterday. He said that they would stick to the manifesto, but when pushed on how they're going to balance the budget, would they be raising VAT, raising taxes? He didn't outright rule it out.
Well, we stand by our pledges in the manifesto around VAT that you just referred to there. But the one thing which I think all businesses need to know and can have total confidence in is that the Chancellor will meet her fiscal rules at the budget. The Chancellor's been so clear that her fiscal rules are non-negotiable, and they underpin everything that we've been doing. When she introduced the fiscal rules at the autumn budget last year, She said, look, we're going to make sure that day-to-day spending is paid for through tax receipts. We will only borrow to invest, and we will get debt falling as a proportion of GDP. And she's maintained those fiscal rules throughout her time as Chancellor so far, and come this autumn, it'll be exactly the same position.
So you said that VAT won't go up, you'll stick to the manifesto, but is there a chance that the government could actually go the other way and actually reduce VAT on certain areas like energy bills?
Well, I can point to what was in the manifesto, and we stand by our commitment in the manifesto in relation to VAT. I mean, beyond the specific commitments in the manifesto, I'm not going to speculate on what might be in the budget. That's for the Chancellor to announce on November the 26th. And of course, there's still work going on with the Office of Budget Responsibility doing the economic forecast, work going on at the Treasury, and then the Chancellor will take all those decisions and announce them at the end of November.
And James, I want to get your thoughts on we had some breaking news on AstraZeneca, of course the biggest company in the UK, that they are bulking up their presence over in the US. And there is a lot of talk about this wealth exodus from the UK, whether it's businesses, whether it's people, whether it's delistings. What are your thoughts around that? Isn't this something that is quite concerning to the government right now?
Well, look, AstraZeneca is a fantastic company and a successful company right around the world. And we know that life sciences and a lot of the work that AstraZeneca and others do is a really important part of the UK economy, which is why life sciences is one of our focal points in our industrial strategy. Now, what the government needs to do and what we are doing is providing that stability for investment decisions that businesses might take. There's public investment going in to infrastructure, £725 billion over the next 10 years in terms of infrastructure in Britain. But we know that that is the basis for encouraging private sector investment as well. And we want to make sure that UK businesses from around the world, look at the £150 billion from US businesses announced just in the last couple of weeks. We want to make sure that money is invested in the UK to create jobs and wealth and make people across Britain better off.
All right, thank you so much, James, for joining us.